Megan Richards said something important, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So I'm just elaborating on something important she said. And by the way, I must tell you that we have a truly constructive and superb relationship with the European Commission now. And I want to thank you, Megan, for your leadership, for how you're managing this, how you work with us. Many, many thanks for that. It's a true partnership with the European Commission. And I just met Commissioner Oettinger a few hours ago in Geneva, and I'll be seeing also Commissioner Ansip. We are working very much together, and I thank you for that. And yes, there are issues. It's not always clear, but we work through them together in a very good spirit. So thank you. Look, I want to mention something about a little bit more detail, because Megan touched on the fact that there are issues beyond what ICANN and the technical community do. So I want to use an analogy I shared today in Geneva that seemed to resonate with many people. In the most simple way, you can divide Internet governance into 3 layers. And if I will use a table as an example, right? So let's say this table. The first layer is under this table, and it's the networks. How many networks that run IP today? Anybody's guess? 55 to 60,000 networks. Every mobile network, fixed line network, AT&T runs a bunch of these, Deutsche Telekom, a lot of people run these. It's highly fragmented. In other words, the Internet with a capital I is not evident in that layer. That layer is a lot of networks. Who regulates that layer? ITU, IETF, IEEE, GSMA, and the list goes on. These are the organizations where policies and standards are built for that layer. And that layer is generally running fine. It's an open layer. People can add networks, and it's working. This is the genius of the Internet: is the ability to just keep adding networks that use the same protocols, and they enlarge the Internet base. Now, the way all of these networks look like the Internet with a capital I is because of a thin layer. Think of it as the table here on top, and that layer is the logical infrastructure of the Internet. That's what we call it, because it's not physical necessarily, it's more logical. What is in this layer is 3 things. Numbers, protocol parameters. This is what you see on your phone as IP number. This is what makes sure that your phone, or soon your plant or your shoe, when they talk to the network, they're unique. The network recognizes them as unique. Anywhere in the world I go with my phone, I connect to any network, any of the 55,000 networks, they recognize me always as Fadi, who's subscribed with AT&T, and that's his IP number, and he's calling from this phone. That's because of the IP number, right? And it's organizations called the Regional Internet Registries, represented here tonight by Axel, if you need to know more about this, that actually manage all of that in the world, right? And this is very important role. The IP numbers. And in fact, as the DNS evolves, the IP numbers may become even more important than the DNS. Because who knows, in 5 years we may not use website names, but IP numbers will always be there. This is very important. So that's one part. The second thing in this layer is the names, which you all recognize. www.fadi.sucks. That's a name. Okay? So that's a name. Now how do you get to that name? When you type that name on any device, how do you get there? Because of a mechanism called the root zone mechanism for the domain name system, which ICANN manages. So the way it works, for those of you who are not familiar, if you put right now ibm.com or fadi.sucks or whatever you want to put on your phone, if it's a mobile phone, will talk to your provider. Let's say you use Vodafone. It'll go to Vodafone and it'll say, where is ibm.com? And Vodafone will check with ICANN. I'm simplifying, but they will check to resolve this with ICANN. And ICANN will say, .com. I don't care what's before the dot. .com, that is a company in Virginia called VeriSign. So I will send you there. They go to VeriSign. VeriSign says, .com, that's me. Now you want IBM? IBM.com is this machine with this number. So now we use a number from these guys. And then the request goes to that, looks for that number, and that machine is in Armonk, New York, and you talk to the IBM server. And that system works. It never failed, ever. You never typed IBM.com and ended up at HP. Never. Never. And that's the power of that system, is that it's stable, and it's secure, and it's predictable. And we need to make sure it stays this way. It's a complex system, so I'm not going to explain it. But if our root zone system stops working, which will never happen, never happened and will never happen because of the way it's architected, you will not find anything on the internet unless you have the number. You will not. Even if you do a Google search, remember all Google searches come back with URLs that include the DNS. So everything will be lost. Therefore, the stability of our 13 root services, because there's 13 in the world, 2 in Europe, 1 in Japan, and 10 in the US. That's where they are, the 13. And they're replicated everywhere. Yesterday I met with the Iranian minister, and we also replicated in Iran, right? Thanks to RIPE, in fact, because they have one of the 13. So they replicated the K root. They have the K root. I have the L root. The roots are by letter. I have the L, they have the K. So this is very important. And finally, I just want to tell you about the system. The US government today is very involved in that system. So, when the mayor of Paris applied to ICANN to add .paris to the root, so now you can have Fauchon.Paris, for example, right? Then I had to add .paris in the root of the internet, in that table. Today, to do that, I had to take permission from the US government. They could say no. Here's the good news. They never said no. Ever. In 16 years. They've been good stewards. They've respected the process. They simply checked that I did my job. They never said no. And when Iran was challenged, .ir was challenged in an American court recently, the American government encouraged me to defend .iran. And I did, and we won the case. So it's very important to know that our neutrality and our independence has been supported by the US government. But politically, it's no longer sustainable. In fairness to them, it's no longer sustainable. So that's the second thing we do, the root. And the third thing we do is the protocol parameters. That's too technical. You can take Mr. Axel later and bug him about that. But these are also a very important component of the routing system, and it's managed by yet another community called the IETF. ICANN coordinates all of that. We don't run it. We don't own it. We're just one of many, and we're partners with these people. We run this table. Now, the reason I explained this table, because now the next thing I will tell you is that that's all ICANN coordinates with the IETF and the RIRs. Every other internet governance issue on your mind is not part of my remit. So the third and final layer is the layer above this table. And that's what I call, that's my name for it, the industrial and social layer of the internet. That's where the applications live. That's where email lives. That's where the cloud lives. That's where human rights live. That's where content rules live. That's where child protection lives. And the list is long and distinguished. Every one of these policy issues that you have to deal with exist on the internet. And now with things like Uber coming, I know we're all up in arms about Uber, although let me tell you, my 89-year-old mother is liberated by Uber. She was stuck in our home, poor thing, since I took the car away from her. And I gave her now Uber. And she is so happy. I get happy messages from her every day because she knows how to get an Uber car to take her to the church or whatever she wants to go. Look, I bring Uber up because I think the European policy system locked up on Uber. And I tell you, Uberization is going to happen to everything. We just started. Wait till the financial sector is Uberized. Wait till our governments are Uberized. Everything will be transformed by this powerful river called the internet. It's unstoppable. The question is, how do we get ready for that? And it's not at ICANN. So I'm telling you all of this because when Megan spoke about the IGF, the importance of all these places are now rising to start dealing with above the table. Once the Americans leave this table, I think this table will be steady, will be depoliticized, and it's well governed and will be fine. But the next challenge will be, how do we govern what's on the table? And here we have a problem. We have a problem. Why? Because the institutions that are needed to govern what's on the table today are missing. Mostly will end up where? In intergovernmental institutions. Because there's nowhere else. Where do we go? Right? I met President Sisi recently, and he's telling me, Fadi, we need to shut all these sites that are inciting our youth to join ISIS. I said, sounds like a good idea, President Sisi. Let me tell you how complicated this is. Where are these sites? All over the world. Okay? So we already have one problem. We don't have one legal system to deal with them. How do you call Romania and say, close these sites? I don't know. You figure it out. Don't you run the internet? No, I don't run the internet. I just run this layer. Now you're getting into public policy issues, President. You need to understand, maybe Interpol needs to be involved. Maybe religious authorities need to be involved. Registries, registrars, AT&T, networks, people, governments need to be involved. Where do we do that today? He doesn't know. So where is he going to ask for that help? He's going to the UN. He doesn't know where to go. We don't have transnational institutions. We don't have multi-stakeholder transnational institutions. We have international organizations that understand how to run things between governments. And that's a problem. So I want you to be worried about this because I'm worried about it. And that's how I answer you about where I'm going after ICANN, because I know many people are asking me. After ICANN, I plan to dedicate a bunch of my time to that issue because I think that this is where we're now heading. How are we going to bring multi-stakeholders together to figure out how to address these very complex transnational issues that include policy and where the multi-stakeholder pure model may not always workable? So don't tweet this, yes, because I still have a job to do for 10 months, but I'm being direct with you. We have people on the multi-stakeholder side who have become religious. If it's not multi-stakeholder, it must be bad. And we have people on the governmental side who say, if it's not multilateral, it must be bad. I remind them, I grew up in Beirut where I saw brothers shoot each other because they were not Catholic enough or they were not Muslim enough. Stop this. We don't want a religious fight here. We want a pragmatic fight. In some issues, we need governments to have a role that is unique. In particular, I was with the National Security Advisor of India. He told me, do you want me to discuss warfare with whom? Who do you want? I have to discuss it with other governments. Cyber warfare. I have to understand what are the rules of play. So there, depending on the issue above our layer, we may need a new hybrid model. A model that respects and appreciates the rule of law and the fact we have an international framework of law. I met this morning with WIPO's Secretary General, and he was telling me, look, at WIPO, we want to work within an international system of laws. We don't understand your system. But he needs to understand our system because he appreciates that if WIPO makes all the treaties, if these treaties are not enforced by all the stakeholders, they're not going to work. And we have issues to solve there. So, hopefully we will get there, but we have a busy few years ahead of us before the vacuum sends all these issues to the intergovernmental institutions, which in my opinion, with all due respect to them, are simply not equipped today to actually deal with these transnational issues that are upon us.